The caution is absent Wednesday? No.
Why am I absent on Thursday?
Last Thursday? No, I didn't. We was at last Thursday. I was school last Thursday. Last Thursday you was absent, man. Look, it's a new week.
All right, class. We're going to get started because last hour we rushed the jury and it just wasn't good. So far we've had 2 trials. The first hour, unanimous verdict for guilty. Second trial, unanimous verdict for not guilty. This trial will be interesting to see what, for some reason the jury got confused. I think jury members, you all have to know and understand that the verdict must be unanimous. If it's not unanimous, then the person is neither not guilty nor guilty. It means then that the prosecution would have to try the case again. Of course, we're not going to spend the time to do that. And they might decide not to do that. So the person goes free if it's a hung jury. The person, of course, goes free if it's not guilty, and he goes to jail or whatever the punishment's going to be if he's found guilty. So when you go to the jury deliberation room, make sure you understand that. I've been disappointed with some of the jury members because some of them go to the jury deliberation room and they haven't even said anything. They just sat in there. You should feel strong enough in what you believe that you're willing to express what that is and why. So have some reasons. Are we all set?
Movie Arturo. Okay. What's up, Ha?
They're so nice.
Tickle. Jesse here. Camel here.
A couple days.
Get it there. No, nigga,
That's a choir room. That's a choir room.
Hey, where'd you get that pen?
that's a graduation.
Is that a
room.
choir room? That's a choir room. No, can you take me over here and forth? No, it's not.
Nothing. You know, I left on me.
I didn't have time to look.
What?
Are you dragging tomorrow? Maybe.
Did you get that for you? Did he buy it for you?
I think so. I'll probably stole it. Call me tomorrow.
All right. Court Room 503, County of San Diego, State of California is now in session. The Honorable Judge, Adriana Williams, is now presiding. Please be seated and come to order.
You're asking my face.
Good morning, attorney, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. This is the third day of this trial, and the charges of this case are the State of California versus defendant Brad Stevens. Mr. Stevens is charged with assault with deadly weapon, California Penal Code, Section 245. The use of force or violence upon the person of another without consent committed with an object in such a manner as to produce death or grave bodily harm. Is there any questions concerning the applied law? Please inform the juryman. Bailiff, please swear in the jury.
All right. Your right hands repeat after me. I promise.
I promise
To listen.
to listen
And base my decision.
and base my decision
On the evidence presented in this case.
on the evidence presented in this case.
Thank you. You may be seated.
Defense, are you prepared to give your closing statement?
We'd like to thank all of you for your time and attention for the past 3 days. You, the jury, have been a very vital part of this case. And now it's time for you to ask yourself, did the prosecution meet their burden of proof? Did they prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt? That means you have not one single doubt in your mind that Brad Stevens is guilty. We know they didn't, and we're sure that you agree the prosecution did not meet their burden of proof. This was made clear from their witnesses, especially Martin Mann. In his testimony, he could not recall walking rapidly towards the front of the arcade, where Brad Stevens stood. But everyone else who testified being there that night in the arcade testified that Martin Mann, in fact, was walking very quickly. Even Martin Mann's date that night, Connie Cook, testified that they were walking quickly. We are sure that Martin Mann did remember walking rapidly and angrily towards the front, where Brad Stevens stood. But for some reason, he did not want to tell you, the jury. But why? It is because when he was going towards the front, in the back of his mind, he really was about to carry out his threat on Brad Stevens, who was standing there helpless and fearful. This threat is what proves Brad Stevens was not the aggressor on the night of June 4th, 1994. And when Martin Mann pushed Brad Stevens to the ground so hard that he sprained his right hand, proves that Brad Stevens was assaulted by Martin Mann that night. And I'm sure if each of you put yourself in Brad Stevens' place, that night you too would have used self-defense. Now picture, you're Brad Stevens standing at the drinking fountain, cleaning up your injured hand. As you turn around, you see Martin Mann, the one who caused this injury to you just a minute ago. He's walking quickly towards you with an angry look on his face. And Martin Mann, being twice as big as you, and apparently very upset, you start to feel helpless. Even though he's 13 feet away from you, he's walking so quickly that you have no time to run. And you can't stop him from coming at you with your hands since you're handicapped from the hand injury. And then suddenly you see Martin Mann reach for his back pocket. The first thing that goes through your mind is not that he's pulling out a wallet. The first thing that goes through your mind is that Martin Mann is about to carry out his threat and injure you further. So Brad Stevens only did one thing on the night of June 4th, 1994, and that was use self-defense. Brad Stevens defended himself from further bodily harm from Martin Mann. And we're positive all of you would have done the same thing if put in the same situation. Now we all know that self-defense is a legal and necessary thing, and it is your right to use when you or anyone else is threatened in any way. But if Brad Stevens, for some reason, is found guilty, then that would mean you believe self-defense is not legal. But we know that you do believe it is, legal and necessary. So on the night of June 4th, 1994, Brad Stevens used self-defense, and it was necessary. So ladies and gentlemen of the jury, after all that you've seen and heard, we know that you will find Brad Stevens not guilty. Thank you for your time.
Prosecution, please give your closing statement.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we have heard testimonies in these last couple of days. The testimonies have shown that the defense witnesses to be inconsistent with their answers. First of all, Jack Lombardi, a friend of the defendant, Brad Stevens, had said that Melanie's video arcade was dimly lit, yet it was bright enough to see what Brad Stevens, Connie Cook, Tanya Morgan, and Martin Mann were wearing 10 feet away from her. Also, Mr. Sidney Berg, who was Mr. Stevens' employer, said he knew Brad Stevens well, but had never seen him outside of the shop. Also, Mr. Berg had no personal knowledge of what happened that night at Melanie's video arcade. Tanya Morgan, in her testimony, had said that she knew Mr. Stevens very well, but in the fact sheet had stated that it was their first date. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution has pointed out that at Melanie's video arcade, the Fargo was left unoccupied. At any video arcade, it is customary for any customer to play any game that is left unoccupied. Mr. Stevens could have gone to any other game that was not being played. Instead, Mr. Stevens shouldered his way in between Mr. Martin Mann and the machine, provoking Mr. Mann to push him. Later on, Mr. Stevens saw Mr. Mann coming towards him in the distance of 13 feet. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is 13 feet. 13 feet is enough distance for Mr. Stevens to have either run or call for help. Instead, Mr. Stevens resulted in violence, hitting Mr. Mann with a deadly weapon. Assault with a deadly weapon, as we have said, is the use of force or violence upon the person of another without consent, committed with an object used in such a manner as to be capable of producing or death or great bodily harm. In Mr. Stevens' testimony, he admitted that he did use force. He did it without Mr. Mann's consent, and he caused great bodily harm by knocking him unconscious and crushing his nose. After Mr. Stevens knocked Mr. Mann unconscious, he showed no remorse. Mr. Stevens did not call for help and did not stay to try to help Mr. Mann. Instead, he ran from the scene. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution has proven Mr. Stevens guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We know you will return a unanimous verdict of guilty because we know you will not allow another criminal to run free. Thank you for taking the time to come here and do the public a favor. The prosecution rests.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have heard the facts presented in this case, and now it is time for you to make your decision. You must determine that the accused is a guilty or assault with deadly weapon. Your emotions should not interfere with the decision. Now, jury members, you may go to the deliberation room. Bailiff, direct them to the deliberation room.
All right.
Going by what they think. They're not going by this.
Thank you.
And then fast.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, they're just saying, no, he's guilty. I think
Let's give it a pull. Let's give it a pull.
that means.
No, can't do that.
Huh?
Why not?
If somebody says it's guilty, most of them say they're gonna change.
Where's Joe Blunt?
For a minute. You need to take your hat out.
I took my head off.
Order in the court.
Oh. Jury would like to say that, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the court wants to hear your decision.
Yes, Your Honor. We come to our decision. We have a hung jury. Hung, whatever it's called.
Yeah. That means, hung jury means they have not reached unanimous.
Go back.
It means that the defendant will be allowed to go free. However, the prosecution has the right to retry the case if they feel like they have enough evidence to retry the case.
Can we hear who voted
What? You can poll it. If the jury wants to. If either side wants to poll the jury, they can do that.
Do you want to pull it?
Yes.
Your Honor, would you like to pull the jury?
Jury, please pull.
Stand up.
Stand up and say your
First, I must
decision.
stand up and say how they voted.
Okay, stand up.
I voted not guilty.
Get up.
I voted guilty.
I voted guilty.
I voted guilty.
I voted guilty.
Guilty.
I voted guilty.
I voted not guilty.
Voted guilty. I voted guilty.
I voted stubborn.
Jackass.
I voted guilty. 3 people?
You 3 people. You three people just ruined it for us.
Take your shirt.
I'm the order in the court.
Should have done a better job.
Shut up, you voted guilty.
Order in the court.
Just start getting mad, alright?
Mr. Brad Stevens, can you stand up?
I can't believe this. He gets set free.
Because the decision was unanimous, so you're found not guilty and you're free to
No,
go.
he's not, don't say he's not guilty.
It's not guilty, just say
Not guilty
unanimous.
Just say he's free to go.
Okay, you're free to go.
No.
Away go.
Go to jail. Go to jail.
Okay, good job, everybody. Remember, hey, listen, this was just an exercise. There are no hard feelings to be taken out of this courtroom on anybody's side. It was just a game.
Nobody can leave. Nobody can leave. Your Honor, if you want to score, I'd still like to know what happened to Oscar Brown. Where's Oscar? Where's Oscar? Where's Oscar? My
Kevin, make me healthy. Kevin, I'm really angry.